Adam, pronouns he, him, calling in from kangaroo yo-yos. Are the kangaroos yo-yoing? Do the yo-yos have kangaroos on them? Are the yo-yos shaped like kangaroos? The world may never know. Adam's calling to ask what kind of evidence we're looking for. Adam, you're on the line with Forrest and Promise. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys?
I'm awesome, man.
Good.
Living the dream right now.
Cool.
And I don't mean that in the dumb millennial, ironic way. I mean, this is actually freaking great.
I always feel bad that I am grouped in with millennials. I mean, I'm more of the first age era of millennials, but a lot of us, the first ones, get a bad rap.
I'm a proud cringe millennial. I love it. Like all the millennial things.
Deeply cringe. I'm all about it. I live to make young people just like suck their own faces into their heads just by how embarrassed they are of me. John, Adam, you're sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I was just gonna see what Adam wanted to talk about.
Yeah, you say you're wanting to know what evidence we're looking for. Do you have a particular way you'd like to phrase that question?
Actually, I was just I just logged on or just watched some of your videos. Probably started yesterday. I've only seen like 2, so you have to forgive me if I'm not familiar with
good.
your entire library.
Yeah. How dare you not watch the hundreds of hours of our dumbasses talking about Jesus? Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. We're here to take questions.
What I'm particularly curious about is I'm a theist. I'm actually an ordained minister, but I've been in ministries for about 26 years. But I've always I've been all across the world. I think 17 different countries. When I served in the military, I met people from different religions, different backgrounds. I was really interested in science. Whenever I went to college, my goal was to become a theoretical physicist. So that pursued me into the universe, and then I got down to where we all came from. So I typically ask, what people believe on our origin. And I haven't heard out of the videos that I've watched of you guys what y'all specifically believe.
As far as the origins of the universe entirely, or of life, or like what?
As far as where we came from, are you guys more of a macro evolution? Are you guys more of a big bang because of cosmic background radiation that we've found? Or are you guys do you guys believe we came from intelligent sources, non-intelligent sources?
Yeah. Promise, do you want to go first? Or you want me to?
I really want you to go first because you're actually an expert.
I am no such thing. No. So I'm a biologist, and I dig into this kind of stuff, and I actually study evolution, specifically human evolution, quite a bit. I specialize in evolutionary biology and bioanthropology for a lot of my research days. And so the Big Bang and evolution, all these things, these are different claims. Excuse me 1 second. Had a grump in my throat, pardon me. But these are all different things, different events at different times that cause different stuff. So yes, the Big Bang is the beginning of the observable universe as we know it, the beginning of space and time as we know it. 13.8 billion years ago, we have a tremendous amount of evidence pointing that direction. You mentioned cosmic microwave background radiation. That's one good one, but it's not certainly the only one. Skip forward a long time, about 9 billion years, and you get to the beginning of the Earth. We know how planets form. So I should say we know how stars work. We know about stellar nucleosynthesis and how stars create new elements. We know how stars explode and scatter those elements all across the cosmos. We know how planets form. You have a stellar nebula, forming this star, and then you have the secretion disk of all this stuff floating around. We know that rocky stuff coagulates pretty quickly. These chunks of meteors and stuff form into big asteroids, which form into planetesimals, which form into planets. We know that solar winds blow a lot of the gases out towards the outer edge of the solar system. That's why we have terrestrial rocky planets in the center, and we have Jovian gassy planets out there at the end, where all the solar winds have blown all those light gases way there far out there. And around these terrestrial planets, we have relatively small atmospheres. As far as how life gets started on this planet, that's abiogenesis. We have a tremendous amount of evidence showing that. We know that the stuff that makes life self-assembles all the time, all by itself, not only on the planet Earth, but also out in space, where nobody can accuse some biased scientist of tweaking the knobs and contaminating the jars. We know that those things polymerize by themselves. We know a lot of how they do that as well. And we know that life started at the absolute latest by about 3.8 billion years ago, 3.8 billion years ago here on this planet, maybe a little earlier, but absolutely by the latest, by 3.8 billion years ago. And we know that evolution works, and we know how it works. We know a lot about evolution, and how it changes those simple organisms into more complex organisms over time. Especially human evolution, we have a ton amount, it's a ridiculous amount of data on. In fact, it is actually, there's a lot of argument and debate within the bioanthropological community over where to classify these different fossils and different species of humans, because we just have too many damn fossils, Adam. So yeah, as far as where we come from, going back to the beginning of the universe all the way up to now, we have pretty solid naturalistic understanding of these things. Natural processes taking us this whole way. We have pretty solid models for all those things. We certainly do not know everything. There is a lot of shit that we don't know. But we know a lot more today than we did last year. We know a lot more than we did 10 years ago. We know a lot more than we did 50 years ago. We're learning more cool stuff every day, and we've yet to find a single reason to think that there was any supernatural influence on absolutely any of it.
I gotcha. So I know I forget the guy's name. One of the guys who discovered cosmic background radiation. I think his name started with an A. Alan, you may know his name right off the bat. I'm not a scientist, but he wrote a paper.
I'm not a physicist. I don't remember that guy either.
Yeah, afterwards he discovered, cosmic background radiation, and he said that the universe came from supernatural origins. So how can an evidence that is based solely on, people use for the Big Bang, which is one of the leading pieces of evidence that we have for the Big Bang, whenever the man who discovered it says it's supernatural, how do we draw these other conclusions off of it?
So here's the thing. I'm just gonna double check here. Are you talking about Arno Allen?
That's it.
Penzias? Yeah. All right, cool. So let's grab him for a second, and let's just pop him. Oh my fucking God, Mouse, I need you to behave. And we're gonna talk about supernatural origin of universe. And I'm just gonna double check. In the abscess, so astronomy leads us, here's this guy, blah, blah, blah. And we're gonna say supernatural. Astronomy leads us to a unique event. The universe was created out of nothing and delicately balanced to provide exactly the conditions to support life. In the absence of absurdly improbable accident, the observations of modern science seem to suggest an underlying, one might say, supernatural plan. And he is quoted in this, whatever, the Just So universe as saying this. So this is a person who is a theist and a scientist, and who discovered a really cool thing about the Big Bang. So he's not saying the Big Bang didn't happen. And he's not saying that there isn't a natural origin to life or anything like that. He's saying that this universe seemingly came out of nowhere and seems balanced to provide the conditions to support life. And that is a very common theistic claim. Very common. I used to work for a guy who was a PhD in particle physics, who was also a Catholic. And he talked to me about how, like, the physics, the beautiful laws of physics that he observed and studied were so perfect that they are worthy of the God that he believed in. This is not uncommon at all. I think it's important to point out, however, that that's one dude, and that by and large, the largest, scientists tend to be atheists a lot of the time. The highest preponderance of atheists in science, the highest percentage, I don't know why I'm using preponderance in this way, but the highest percentage of atheists in the scientific community tend to be in things like physics and evolutionary biology, because we don't need these questions anymore. So yeah, there's lots of scientists that are religious. There's lots of scientists that have different religions that go against what this guy's religion is. That's not a reason, just because this guy can't come up with a good reason to say the universe came out of nothing, which is a weird thing to say, because I don't know of any other theoretical physicist who would use that kind of language too often. That's not really a reason to believe in any kind of a supernatural thing, because I don't think that's the actual claim he's making.
Well, I mean, the supernatural origin. I mean, it's kind of. I know you guys are asking for majorly evidence of things,
Mhm.
and something coming from nothing has never actually been observed.
Do you
So
want to know
Sure.
where I think the universe came from?
where's that?
I have no idea. I just have no idea. I don't think it came from nothing.
That is a
I
good
just don't
answer.
know. I have no idea. And that's why I
That
don't
That is a
really
good
believe in a
answer.
explains it
I
a
God.
little
mean,
bit. And so, and that's the thing,
whenever
man, is that
whenever I
like
was.
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you guys off. I apologize.
No, there's a delay.
Whenever.
It's just nobody's fault. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I break things down. Whenever I was, I never finished my degree. Whenever I got out of the military, I suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, and I had
I'm
to
sorry to hear that.
end my college degree. But whenever I was studying, I grouped things into falsifiable theories and unfalsifiable theories. To me, actual science was provable, testable, and repeatable. And then we have the unfalsifiable theories. And then creation falls into that unfalsifiable theory. So does macroevolution. Because let's say, as a hypothetical, let's say for the next 10,000 years, we find a hot spring and we begin recording all of the activity at this hot spring starting today, uninterrupted by mankind. And for the next 10,000 years, a cell has formed into a slug. Now, I'm not saying the timelines are exactly correct, but
Sure.
have we proved evolution? And the answer is we proved that evolution occurred, but we didn't prove that our origins are from the same process.
Right.
So, in order to prove that, you would basically need to contact Doctor Who and get your hands on a TARDIS. But
Right.
it's something that
Uh,
it's an unfalsifiable theory. So, I know you
so
say
that's
that
so
we know
there's a
these
couple
things,
issues.
but yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you were at the end of your sentence. If you want to finish that sentence, I'm fine with it.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so a couple of things. Number one, I think that what Promise just said is really important. As I said when I was talking about these things we do know, I also made sure to point out there's a ton that we don't know. But I don't know doesn't equal God. And so, like, even if I were to take it back to, to throw away the Big Bang, throw away evolution, throw away everything, we don't know anything about the universe. There's still not a good reason to insert magic as the explanation. You would need evidence to make a decision. Um, and the second thing you said that macroevolution is unfalsifiable. That's fundamentally untrue. There's plenty of ways we can falsify evolution. Like, for example, if we were to find one single human fossil down next to a T-Rex fossil and it's dated the same date, we're done. Evolution's over. It's done with. There have been plenty of times over the course of our study of evolution that we have thought we found the end of it, where we found a problem. For example, human chromosome number 2. We chimps and bonobos are our closest relatives. They're our closest cousins, and yet they have an extra pair of chromosomes that we don't have. Losing a chromosome in the short amount of time from when we split from the lineage that of chimpanzees would be a lethal deletion that would not be possible. And so the only explanation that's possible, either two chromosomes fuse together or evolution's done. That is falsified. That evolution is not real if we cannot find where this fucking chromosome went. And sure enough, we look at human chromosome number 2, and it's two chromosomes fused together. It's a Robertsonian translocation. It's something that we actually understand the mechanisms of, and we now know where that chromosome went. And so, like, there's plenty of ways that you could prove evolution wrong. And despite several chances of evolution being proven wrong, evolution always comes up as being right. And when you talk about, we can prove evolution happens, that doesn't necessarily prove that we evolved. True. But we also have separate evidence of humans evolving. When we look at the fossil record of just our ancestors, you can pretty easily build a straight line. Even though evolution doesn't really deal in straight lines, that's not the point. We're talking colloquially here, but we actually do have separate evidence of just that. And even now, we can look at just humans today and see several markers of our evolutionary history, several vestigial structures, several indicators of our history written all over our bodies. So, it's not just like, yeah, we can watch some bacteria evolve in a lab, therefore I know humans evolved too. That's not good evidence at all for human evolution. The evidence for human evolution is the evidence that I'm trying to propose for human evolution.
Well, I have a question. What about the existence of out of order fossils? Like we found out of order fossils nearly all over the planet, and these usually when they arise, science is faced with a conundrum to how to explain this species belonging with this species whenever they're out of date fully. So usually it comes down to, oh well, it was an earthquake, or it was a volcano that occurred. So they provide a what they consider a rational answer, and then it's considered answered, and then they move on. And then,
No.
but it's the type of thing to where once again, I can't exactly prove that. I can't go and just be like, well, I don't know that an earthquake occurred right then and there,
You
50
can.
million years ago.
So that's the
And
thing. It's not just something they say and then move on. They pose that as a hypothesis, and then they go and do some tests. So, like, when we look at the strata, when we look at the geologic column, right? You have different fossils and different layers. There are plenty of different events that can cause those layers to become bent, to become tilted, to be completely inverted. Like, there's plenty of ways those things can happen. And you have an out of order fossil record in this one particular area. And you can then go back and double check. You can radiometrically date the rocks themselves. You can look for other markers around the landscape to understand the geological history. I'm not a geologist, but I work with one that blows my mind every time we go out fossil hunting, and he can literally look out at the landscape and read the rocks the way he's reading a book and say, oh, look, there used to be a lake here. You can tell because of this, this, and this. And it looks like the same goddamn grass to me, but this dude who's really good at this is able to say, oh, no, actually, so there's this deformation pattern, and there's this pitch at this angle and this shift, and like this is what happens when there's an earthquake. It looks like that. And so, like, for the same reason that I look at a skeleton and say, this bone is this shape and it has this angle to it, that's what happens when there's a muscle attachment that does this thing. I can read bones, he can read rocks. And together we can look at a fossil in a particular area and say, okay, this is this kind of thing, and this is when it lived. We do radiometric testing on the rocks surrounding it. We can sometimes, depending on the age of the fossil, do radiometric dating on the fossil itself, and we can tell a little bit more. And that's just one type of dating method, by the way. Radiometric dating is an absolute dating method. There are several absolute dating methods. There are several relative dating methods, and they confirm each other. We can double check using different ones. It's not like, we know this rock is 65 million years old because it has a 65 million year old fossil in it. And we know the fossil is 65 million years old because it's in a 65 million year old rock. It isn't that way. Like, we can actually cross-reference several different dating methods to make sure that what we're saying makes sense. So yeah, geologic activity happens and it can make shit confusing sometimes. But that's not a reason to doubt the geological column, because we have naturalistic ways of understanding how those things happen and what kind of patterns they're going to produce. And we can go back and double check. Again, that would falsify evolution if we didn't have that, but we do.
Okay, like whenever you say radiometric dating, and I know there's several different types of dating, from amino acid dating to, like you said, radiometric dating to, the most accurate that we use is actually star maps. If a civilization kept good star maps, then we can date them more accurately. But most civilizations didn't keep good star maps or lineages and time frames.
Sure.
But
plenty of dinosaurs didn't either. Yeah, so it kind of sucks. We have to work on go with the isotopes we have available to us.
Exactly, and then let's say that we had the whenever it comes to geological dating. Radioactive material in rocks and the surfaces of rocks, that we found out that a strong rainfall kind of screws up the dating. So rain can actually affect the fissures and the cracks in the rocks and how we date them. So these things are constantly being discovered.
So
new ways, like we just discovered with Neanderthals. I think it may have been Princeton that came out this year, saying that Neanderthals weren't the dates on our ancestors. Neanderthals are not exactly correct. So what I don't understand is, how can we close the book on any of this stuff whenever and say that we know something? And
we can't.
It's like at the beginning is like when you're saying, well, we know
that's
this,
why
we know
that's why
the way
Forrest
planets are formed.
right, but that's why Forrest
really
is a scientist, to keep learning more and more and more.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah, we
scientists
can't.
didn't just
I
stop at a certain point.
Yeah, that's the big thing that's really important. Is you talk about like rate. Yeah, so like there's some dating methods can be fucked up in some ways. That's why I made sure to point out that we don't just ever use one. We cross-reference several different ones and come to the same conclusion. There are relative dating methods and absolute dating methods. We're never just going to rely on relative dating methods unless we absolutely have to, because those are relative. They're faulty sometimes if we're depending on the conditions around them. But as far as when can we close the book on this and say, okay, now we know everything about this, we can't, and we never can, and we never could. And that's never what science claimed to be able to do. Science is just learning new stuff. And the cool thing about science is that every single time you learn something, every time you answer a question, you find 3 more questions right underneath it. That's how it always has been and how it always will be. And so when it comes to things like evolution, we are figuring out when things evolved, how things evolved, by what mechanisms things evolved, why they evolved, what selection pressures aided their evolution, not whether or not they evolved. We have put to bed that things have evolved. We have answered that question thoroughly. Now we have the next questions. Okay, well, what does that mean? How does that work? We know how this part of development works, but what causes it? And that's the next question down. It's questions all the way down. And that's what science is all about. So like, to try to poke a hole and say, look, here's this one tiny thing about whatever random dating method that we aren't 100% sure on, or that we learned something new about, that doesn't give you reason to say, well, therefore, we probably don't actually know anything, and there must be some sort of magic, which we don't have any evidence for, but it might be there, so I can't say it isn't. And like that's not a reasonable scientific framework to live under.
Yeah, Adam, you said something interesting, because you said you said like what would close, like why would we close the book on, or what would get us to that point? But can I ask you, do you believe, it says you're a theist, so I'm assuming you believe in a God. Do you believe that this God is the origin of life, I would guess, like a creator of some sort?
I personally do, but I go by faith, and a faith
right,
is
I understand, but
than a science.
I understand that, but that's what my point is isn't that closing a book pretty hard? That to me seems to be incredibly definitive and doesn't leave room for things to stay open and for you to learn more and figure it out. Or are you on the position that like you're just letting this be the placeholder until something else better comes along?
Well, no, I have subjective evidence, but it's pointless for us to argue subjective evidence, because anything I bring up, you can just deny and say, well, that may have never happened. So
and why are you okay?
Undeniable.
Yeah, why are you okay with subjective evidence for what you believe, but not for evolution?
Well, I don't believe that you can have subjective evidence for evolution, that we are origins for evolution, because we cannot go back there and subjectively view it. So I believe that my subjective evidence now, today, is more concrete than a theory that people say has closed the book on. But then we have biologists who are not poking holes, really, but the more we discover about DNA, the more complex it becomes.
So, Adam, I once was in the position where I didn't know if evolution was true or not. I was like recovering from the way I was raised, and I still didn't believe in any God because I didn't see a good reason to believe that a God existed. So I think we're conflating scientific theories with atheism, and there is oftentimes overlap happening there. But that still isn't like, to me, I can be a person that says, evolution sounds really sketchy to me and I don't believe in it, because I can just be uneducated about it. And I still don't believe in a God. So I'm not understanding, like,
No, I
this is
wasn't
like a big
conflating.
leap to
Don't get me
take.
wrong.
It
I'm not
also,
Right.
conflating. That's the reason why I asked from the beginning what you do believe. Is I wasn't
well, it
conflating
also,
your atheism with the
But
belief
that has
in
nothing to do.
macroevolution.
If evolution were to be suddenly just like completely crippled and disproven, I still don't believe in a God. So that is
right.
Well,
like,
that's fine.
it's like, yeah. So that's why it's just like not that. I don't understand how
Yeah,
these have anything to do with each other.
that's the thing that's so
Well,
important,
the
is that
reason
even
I'm
if we get rid of
asking,
evolution, you have to then demonstrate creationism. You have to have evidence that there is a God, that this God can create things, that this God did create things. Then you need to start answering questions about how and why, the way that we answer questions about how and why with evolution. And you don't have any of that. You have zero evidence for this God, zero evidence for creation, zero evidence for any of this. You only have questions that science has not satisfactorily answered for you. And you're using those questions as evidence for some other magic, and that doesn't make any sense. It also sounds like there might
no,
be a disconnect on what the
I'm
word
not
theory
saying
means.
that. I'm not saying that you made the claim that we know certain things. Okay.
We do.
I've made the claim that I know God based on subjective evidence, that I'm not going to
Right,
argue because it's
but
pointless. You've made
nothing that
claims
I
that we
said we
know this
know is
because of the
subjective.
scientific community.
Yes, nothing that I've said is based on subjective evidence. So me saying we know that, the basic building blocks of life can self-assemble, that is knowing based on testable, repeatable, falsifiable, all the things that you care about as a scientific method. That's what I'm saying when I say we know. It is
And
not the same as you saying your God is real at all.
yeah, and I'm just sitting here saying I don't know, and my response hasn't been addressed yet. I'm still not convinced. Like, nothing you've said back and forth with Forrest has convinced me to believe that a God exists at all.
Well, that's a personal choice you have to make. I mean, if
It's
you
not a
choose to
choice. I
believe
can't
in
choose.
God, I
I
mean,
can't choose to believe, Adam. I didn't choose to stop believing in a God. So, did you choose to stop believing any of the things you no longer believe? No, because it's something that happens to you based off of, whatever information you take in and then how you relate to that information. So I can't choose to believe in a God. I need to be convinced. So how would you convince somebody who's just like, yeah, I don't know, but I don't see any reason to believe? What are your good reasons? Because it sounds to me like you're just
well,
trying to
the
like
first thing I
poke
would
at
ask.
evolution. So sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was curious as to his comments, Forrest's comments on what we know, and to me, it's something that's constantly unfolding. So there's, like you said, for
Sure.
everything we answer, there's three more questions below it. But your
And I'm saying
point
that's not
exactly.
relevant to my lack of belief. None of that, nothing that you guys have just discussed in the last 27 minutes is relevant to my lack of belief in a God. So I'm just asking, like, why should I be convinced to believe in a God?
Well, by your own admittance, you're living your life as as you see fit. You find your own purpose. There's no reason for me to convince you that there is a God. There's no reason for you to call and talk to theists at all, really,
Well, I
because
don't call
I
theists,
mean,
they
with
call
an
me. But the
extreme.
Bible tells you that you actually are supposed to do that.
Well, no, the Bible says that I am to spread the gospel, so that's what I
Sure.
do.
right.
And whether or not you believe is up to you. I mean, I can present
So
my
Adam,
faith to you.
do you believe in a hell? Do you believe that hell exists?
Yes,
Okay. Do you believe that I'm going to go there if I don't convert to Christianity?
according to the religious foundation that I believe in, yes. If you do
Okay.
not
Why is it
accept
So if
always
Jesus,
the
I believe
long
that,
yes.
hedge?
yeah. So Adam, if I believed that, I would, and this is actually what ended up making me become an atheist, is because I was doing my homework and trying to actually get good reasons, because I was so worried about the people in the world that I loved and cared about, and even people I didn't know, that I was desperate to be able to convince them. I didn't want to just say, well, here's the gospel, and if you don't believe, well, I guess you're going to burn forever. I actually valued people around me, and I wanted to give them good reason because I wanted them to be okay. Then when I found out I didn't have good reason, I didn't have convincing evidence for other people, it was like, why am I believing this? So then I had to examine all of that. So kind of offensive to hear that you would call and you would be able to just be fine with Forrest and I going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not on me. I mean, it's the type of thing to where you've already heard the gospel.
It's not, that's
Probably
fine.
both of
It's
you
not
have.
on you. So if we burn and go to hell, you had the opportunity here to convince us that a God exists and you didn't do it.
Yep.
No. See, you talk
Didn't
to
God say
Christians
something
all
about
the
how, like,
time
if you're
who give
lukewarm,
you
he'll
the
spew you from his
same.
mouth and stuff?
Well, I'm not lukewarm.
This sounds real lukewarm because, Adam, I went to ministry school so that I could figure all this out, so that I could go talk to people and convince them and save them from an eternity in hell. Why are you not door to door every day trying to convince people?
I don't know what ministry school you went to, but Jesus saves, you don't. So it's the type of thing, once you hear the gospel,
Semantics.
then you're
Adam,
semantics are fun.
Adam, what is your evidence for us that a God exists so that we don't end up burning in hell for forever? Or are you willing to just get off this phone call and say, well, it is what it is. I didn't try very hard at all, but you didn't even give us the gospel, by the way. But, you're willing to just be like, oh, well, it's a wash. I tried to talk about evolution and we got nowhere. So now they're going to hell.
I don't care.
I don't care about every other.
Already taught.
No, I want you to tell me why I should believe that a God exists. If you really truly believe that I'm going to burn forever, is there any human part of you that feels for that and wants to provide convincing evidence so that I don't have to go through that?
Well, that's just the thing, is that you have been taught a gospel and a religion that you spread to other people to save them that's fully faith-based, to not walk by sight, to walk by faith, and then you've rejected it. And the thing about it is that I'm just going to provide you with something that's fully faith-based.
Adam, give me a reason to accept it. Otherwise, you're just admitting that you don't have a good reason for us to convert. You don't have a good reason for us to believe a hell even exists. You don't have good reason for us to believe that your God is anything resembling reality.
Well, how about this? Here's the biggest thing, okay? Here's the only thing I can really tell you, is that if I'm right, in the end, when we die...
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Then
God damn it.
It's Pascal's wager.
You are the ones who go and lose. But if you're right,
no,
then we're both in the same boat.
Adam, let me present you another situation. Adam, let me present you another situation. Let me present you another situation. What if you and me are both wrong, and there was another God that neither of us was able to learn about because a bunch of other people followed that God like you who didn't have good reason to convince other people that it exists. And we end up going to this other God's hell, you and me both, because we picked the wrong God and we pissed him off because I was an atheist. Actually, I pissed him off a little less because at least I wasn't worshiping something else. And you were worshiping this other God. And now we're both going to hell. There's an infinity amount of other options that end up like that. It is not just these two choices of either Christianity or nothing. Those are the only options. So that's called Pascal's wager, and that's a good one for you to go learn about.
Also, it's important to point out that even if you're using Pascal's wager, as a Christian, there are 40,000 denominations of Christianity. That's not an exaggeration. There are over 40,000 different flavors of Christianity, many of which are incompatible with the rest of them, many of which believe all the other Christians are doing Christianity wrong and are going to hell. There's a huge bunch of Christians that say that faith alone gets you to heaven. There's a whole bunch of people who say that faith is lame without works and you must do the works of Christianity. There's a bunch of people who say once saved, always saved. There's a bunch of people who say you can be saved and then you can reject God and you go to hell anyway. Like, you are wrong based on 39,999 other kinds of Christianity that think that you're going to hell because you didn't convert to them. You don't even have to look at the infinite other religions. Your own religion has so many possibilities that you should expect damnation by probability alone.
Well, there's your proof right there that my religion is true.
That's the dumbest thing I have heard today, and we had 3 troll calls. Your religion has 40,000 incompatible versions of itself. That means it's true is insane.
Well, think about it. Okay? Think about it for a second. If God's real and Satan's real, and God says that I'm not going to remove my word from the earth. Okay. It's going to stay there. He's going to protect that part. So Satan looks at it as like, I can't really get rid of God's word. So what do? I muddy the waters. I create thousands of different denominations. I create different Bibles.
So in that case, Adam,
I confuse people so much that.
How do you know that the waters didn't get so muddy that you've been convinced to believe that God is the good guy when it's actually Satan? How do you know the waters didn't get muddied so much that you're not believing something completely false? How do you know that there's anything true left in it?
Well, that's like, we might as well watch like Ocean's 13 and see who double-crossed who, and to the point to where
Adam, can you answer the question?
Double-crossed everybody.
Can you answer the question? How do you know that anything true is left if you think that the waters were muddied so hard that there's 40,000 plus denominations that cannot agree on so many things about the Bible?
Like I said, I have my subjective evidence.
Right. So
let me ask you a question, Adam. Sorry, you go ahead. Go ahead. I have two different questions and we're done.
Yeah, this will be my last thing and then you can take over. You have, so far, from my perspective, you called in, you talked about evolution for a long time. I sat here like, okay, cool. And then I asked you if you believe in a hell. You do. You think that Forrest and I, as of now, are going to hell. And you're just okay with this. And you're okay with believing something that you don't have good enough reason to convince other people to believe. But it's so serious that Forrest and I are going to burn for eternity. It's a very disappointing call that you don't have any convincing evidence for this thing that you're willing to believe based off of, as you said, faith, or as I say, nothing.
So let me get this straight. You're upset, even though I didn't say that I wasn't upset that you guys would burn in hell forever. I just said it's out of my hands, which it is. And you're upset that you don't follow a faith-based belief by faith, that you want sight, even though the faith says don't walk by sight. And then
you're misunderstanding.
You want me to be upset about
I'm
that?
disappointed. No. I'm disappointed for you that you're willing to believe and base your life around something so serious that you think we're going to burn for it, and yet so unconvincing that you can't provide evidence for us, and yet you're willing to believe that. I'm disappointed for you. That's why I said this call is kind of a bummer.
Yeah. I have two other questions for you, Adam, really quickly before we move on. Just based on, I had a bunch of other questions about science, but it's clear that you don't care about them. So, like, when we talk about this God and Satan thing that you just brought up, that Satan muddied the waters so much to create all these different denominations of Christianity, God is very serious in the Bible. God cares a lot about people believing in him the way that he wants to be believed in. God is very jealous. God says, my name is jealousy. You must worship him the way he wants to be worshiped. Why would God, if God wants us to be saved and loves us eternally and all these things, allow Satan to contort his image and his word, his pride, his jealousy, his ego, and his love for us should stop him, right? Should make him intervene and make sure his word is pure. But he doesn't do that. He allows Satan to twist and contort it. Why do you think that is?
Well, first off, God's ways is above our ways. So that's
so
one
just
thing the Bible
no
does
thoughts
say.
At all. Gotcha.
Well, no, I can finish the statement. But the thing about it is that, I mean, you can even look at the story of Job. I mean, I've seen people look at Job and then get so upset as, why did God do this? Why did he allow this situation to happen? You know, that type of thing. And there's going to be a lot of unanswerable questions whenever it comes to faith and religion. We can make theories and guesstimations, or we can, try to figure out, to try to understand why God does what he does. But
no, Adam, because I don't believe that a God is, much less does.
Yeah,
you're like thing, going over so many things, and then your God, you didn't get us anywhere in this conversation.
That's the thing, man. What I said about no thoughts at all, I wasn't insulting you. I was saying what you just said is what I like to call an everlasting thought stopper. Why, if this God is the most intelligent being in the universe, the definition of love itself, why would he allow his arch nemesis that he also made and also knows is going to do all these things because he knows everything? Why would he allow this arch nemesis to contort his word so that people who love God and want to follow God will be led farther away from that God and will be burned for all eternity because they did it wrong. That makes no sense. That isn't love. That isn't intelligence. That is nothing. And you, rather than grappling with the logic of that reality, just say, well, God's ways are above our ways. That's you're just deliberately refusing to think about what this God is actually doing.
No,
I have
honestly,
a different question for you after you answer
I was
that.
continuing my answer, but actually it's because it's a separation. Basically, God separates the wheat from the chaff in ways.
And there would be more wheat. There would be more wheat if his message were pure, which he could do. In fact, that's what Islam claims he did. He sent another angel and said the Bible is corrupted. This is now the perfect last version of it. So,
Adam,
like, sorry, go ahead.
If you believe, I know it's all confusing. If you believe, Adam, that this God is separating the wheat from the chaff, if you believe in the God that I think you believe in, which is an all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful God, then this God knew when it created the wheat and the chaff, which was going to be which. And that means you are actively choosing to worship a God that created me, knew before he knit me together in my mother's womb that I was going to end up in hell for all of eternity. And he said, you know what? I'm going to make her anyways. That's a fucked up God, and that's a fucked up thing to worship.
Yep.
Well, why? I mean, whenever he first created man and he told us to be fruitful and multiply, I mean, he gave us the perfect environment. He gave us immortality, and all we had to do was one rule.
Nope. Adam, if I could have all the same powers as God, and I sat here and I decided to make a being, knowing in my head that this being is going to end up burning in hell for all of eternity. Is that fucked up of me to create that being?
Well, if you had unlimited foreknowledge, who knows what decisions you would actually make, because you don't.
Another thought,
Adam, if I knew, if I just asked it very clearly, if I knew that being was going to end up burning in hell for all of eternity, would that be fucked up of me to create that being anyways?
If you knew that they would end up in hell and then you created them, were they in hell by their own choice, or were they in hell by your forced decision?
Adam, let's say it's their let's say it's their choice. Let's say they're going to choose hell, and I know that, and they're going to burn for eternity. Is it fucked up of me to create that being that otherwise wouldn't exist, knowing that?
No.
This is a yes or no question. That's not fucked up?
No. Why would it be?
This is the thing, man.
So you think it's okay to create something just to torture it? That's actually really not, like, you should talk to somebody about that.
That's pretty
I didn't. If they choose the path themselves, I don't understand how I'm torturing them.
Let me try a more concrete example. Maybe this will help. Say I record a football game. There's a football game on TV. I record it. And I spend the next 5 years watching that same football game on repeat over and over and over. I know everything there is to know about this football game. I know every step that every player ever makes. I know every second. You could give me any one individual half of a second of the game, and I can tell you exactly what's going on, where everybody is, what's happening. All the players are acting on their own free will. They had free choice. They did everything they wanted to based on their choice. Now, I press play on the game and I say, if this team loses, I'm going to punish them. Is that justice? Is that moral?
Well, how do you know God did that?
He didn't ask that. That's not the question. He's asking you about this hypothetical.
Yes. God knows everything. God knows who's going to hell before they're even created. That's what Eve was just saying. God makes people knowing that they are going to freely make choices, and those free choices are going to land them in hell, and he makes them anyway. So, analog, just a little analogy here. If I know who's going to win the football game, and I say, if this other team loses, I will punish them. They still have freedom of choice. They're still making their own decisions. They still lose the game. I knew from the beginning they would. And I am now punishing them for their free choices. Is that wrong of me?
Wait, so you don't think hell was created originally for Satan and his angels.
Someday, Adam, at some point in your life, you are going to need to answer a question that somebody asks you. And I hope that it's an easier one than
I've
these.
answered them
because
all.
it's genuine. No, you have
No,
not.
you haven't.
I am asking you a straightforward question. God knows before he makes someone whether or not they're going to hell. He is all-knowing. That's what that means. If he chooses to make that person anyway, he is making them for the purpose of them going to hell. I am asking you, and Promise is asking you, is it morally right for God to make people knowing that they are going to be tortured for eternity no matter what? They are freely going to put themselves there. He knows the outcome and he makes them anyway. Is that a morally correct thing for him to do?
Well, let's say in a football game, no. In life where you
Now we're on the
sin
football game.
against the perfect
So,
God,
Adam-
then yes.
So, Adam,
I mean, how many times do I have to
I want to
answer
point something out. You
fully?
haven't answered. That's why we keep asking. You can go back and listen to the call.
I answered
It's actually
yours.
kind of,
I said
it's nice
no.
because
I answered his.
so
I said
I'm in the
yes.
middle of talking. I'm in the middle of a sentence. So we have asked you these things and you've skirted around. If you go listen to the call, we can almost hear you running away from each question over and over and over again because you have to fit it into your dogma. I understand what that's like. I have been there. It's exhausting, but it's exhausting to engage in as well. The nice part is you're doing our job for us because this makes for great clips when people get to hear over and over and over again, theists absolutely unable to engage honestly with the conversation and answer us. Some theists do that. And I love those conversations because then they say, yeah, you know what? I don't know. That's a good point. Thanks for pointing that out. What do you think about blah, blah, blah? And then we go back and forth and back and forth. But you, I believe, are smarter than the answers that you are not giving us. And that's why you're scared of them and skirting away. And it's very frustrating.
I've answered you. I don't understand.
You've given us half-assed answers if you answer them at all. And it's usually just another sermon or another thought stopper.
I just told you in the hypothetical of a football game, no. And then I told you in the in reality of what this is, choosing sin over a perfect God, then yes, he has every right to do that. That is two.
I didn't ask if he has the right. We didn't ask if he has the right. We did not ask if he has the right. We asked if that's morally right to do, not if he has the right. Can he do it? Sure, apparently that's what you think. But is it moral? Do you, Adam, think that that is moral? If you were God, would you do that?
If I was absolutely perfect, then I would have to do that.
Gross.
Let me tell you, man. Repulsive.
Yeah, here's the thing, dude. You mentioned earlier, like, you think that Satan contorted God's word, and that's why we have all these different denominations of Christianity. Let me tell you just very quickly before the last little bit of the show here. If I was Satan, I would do the same thing. If I was Satan and there really was a God and God really did have his word published, all these things, I would do the same thing. I would make sure that I twisted and contorted that word so that the wrong religion would spread. And I would make sure that number one, I would make sure that everybody believed in Satan. I would make sure that Christians believed they were winning if they believed in Satan. I would spread the message that the greatest lie the devil ever told is that he didn't exist. So people thought they were getting a leg up on me by believing in me. And then I would do everything I could to convince everybody that I was God and that God was me. And I would put out a book. I would make sure that the Bible had a God that is hateful and genocidal and tells people to kill every man, woman, child, infant, baby, ass, horse, cattle, everybody, eliminate entire civilizations. I would make sure that the God of the Bible is homophobic and says that if a man lies with another man, that it's an abomination, their blood is upon them. I would make sure the God of the Bible is misogynistic. I would make sure the God of the Bible talks about how women can't have power, women can't control the church, women can't have authority, women should be submissive, I would make sure the God of the Bible is so misogynistic that in the original sin story, he punishes Adam almost not at all, and then punishes Eve by making her have painful childbirth and be subjugated and must be subservient to men. I would make sure the God of the Bible is racist and xenophobic and evil and malevolent and egotistical. I would make the God of the Bible say shit like, my name is jealous. I would make the God of the Bible set children on fire for putting the wrong type of incense in an incense burner, and then command those children's parents not to grieve them, lest they and their entire community be killed as well. That's some real shit in the Bible that God did. I would make the God of the Bible drown every living creature on earth, because he was regretful that he had created humans. I am so upset that I had these children. I'm going to kill them and everybody else except for one tiny incestuous family. I'm going to make the God of the Bible loaded with incest stories. The Bible's going to be loaded with stories about incest, loaded with stories about rape, loaded with stories about genocide, loaded with pedophilia. I'm going to make the God of the Bible rape a girl too. Mary could not have consented. That's a power dynamic that we wouldn't allow today. That is statutory rape. That's not okay. I would make the God of the Bible the most evil motherfucker I probably could, and then tell everybody to worship him. And I would tell everybody that Satan is the one that wants you to love everybody, the one that wants you to be gender inclusive, the one that wants you to love trans people, the one that wants you to love gay people, the one that wants you to welcome, new cultures and be critical thinking, the one that wants bodily autonomy for people with uteruses, all these different things. That's all Satan. All the good shit, that's what the devil wants. And God is the one that wants you to be hateful and racist and homophobic and xenophobic and transphobic and misogynistic. That's what I would do if I was Satan. And look what we got. We got a book that meets the mark, that fits the bill perfectly for Satan contorting your religion into the thing that you believe now. Tell me I'm wrong, Adam, and tell me why.
Well, I believe that you should absolutely believe that. I mean, we follow our fathers. So, I mean, if your father is the devil, then this is exactly what you
and that's why I know you worship Satan. You worship Satan, and you abandon God.
You worship Satan type of debate? I mean,
no, I'm telling you, the God of the Bible that you believe in is actually Satan, and Satan has contorted this word to make you believe in a false religion. That's what you already said you believe most people believe. You said you believe most people already believe that most people have already fallen prey to this trap. I'm saying you did too. Tell me why I'm wrong.
It's just an accusation. What am I supposed to
prove me wrong?
You're wrong on what?
Yeah. So you got nothing.
On an prove assumption that you made. Okay. You've made
Adam, you made the same assumption. He's just using your argument against you, and you can't even pay attention enough to see that. He just did to you what you've been trying to do to us this whole conversation, and you can't take an honest look at it and see that.
And I did what you did to billions of Christians around the world. I just said the same thing back to you. I just said it cooler. Anyway, Adam, this is going nowhere very quickly, and it has been for the past 30 minutes. So we're going to move on. If you want to actually try, like, really seriously thinking about the things you're saying and give us an actual answer for any of them, we'd love to talk to you again. But right now, it sounds like you are trapped in this just cycle of dogma, where you're coming up with reasons why everybody else is wrong because Satan, but you're right because Jesus. And it's fucking lazy, man. So I hope you do better next time. Call us back sometime, okay?
I'm sorry, is the call over now? Is no response?
It was going to be. I was going to let you say a thing. I was going to let you say goodbye or whatever, but I don't have to if you don't want me to.
Oh, no. I mean, if you guys are done, then that's fine. I'll move on so you guys can get to someone else.
Okay, bye.
Bye, Adam. Yeah. Thank you for showing up with the true gospel at the end there so that you can save us from heaven and make sure we all go safely to hell, which sounds like a much better place to be. Because that's what's so frustrating and shocking to me. I don't know why it's shocking. I need to stop being surprised by this. But for Adam to answer that's totally morally fine of a God to do that, either Adam is deeply unwell and needs to talk to somebody. I would venture to say that's probably not the case here, because I bet, as he said, that would be wrong in any other scenario. He is just allowing for psychopathy and horrific behavior because of this one piece of dogma he has that he has to cling to. And it's really frustrating to see right in your face why some of these people will practice and believe such horrible things like bigotry, because they have made allowances for this narrative. And also, now we're going to hell. So good job, Adam.
You know what? I've met some of the people that are going to heaven, and I'm good.
I'm so good.
I love that Stephen Fry bit. He was talking to a bunch of, I think he was talking to Mormons, and they were like, don't you understand? If when you go to heaven, you're surrounded by all your relatives, all your family members for eternity. It's like, okay, well, what happens if I'm good? And they're just shut down the conversation. It's great, man.
Hello, and that was, if I had to say, probably the worst clip I have ever seen on the line. Frankly, that was terrible because they say a lot of facts, but we have alternative facts on our side. Now, do remember that if you are seeing me next to some woman who, frankly, not impressed, but if she were to laugh, that would be an endorsement of me, Donald Trump. A laugh is an endorsement, so do not smile or your face will crack. Don't do it. You can't do it. Okay, I really thought she would break by now, so it's kind of ruining the bit I'm trying to do here. But you can like, you can subscribe. Oh, there it is. She endorsed me.